Karen Cleveland's personal transformation started post divorce when she was broke, stuck in a payday loan cycle, and her adult son was diagnosed with cancer and had to live with her. After feeling like she failed herself and her son, she realized she had to shift her mindset and her routines to change her situation. This experience is what she relies on to share tips and inspiration with others. Karen is a spiritual connection specialist, a new thought minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living, a mindset mentor, and an animal communicator. She also offers carefully curated transformational adventures on sacred safaris through Kenya. Once her clients return home, she continues to work with them on their inner journey to accomplish once buried dreams through mind, body, and soul connection exercises. She is also the host of the Connectedness podcast, where she teaches these same principles to engage mind, body, and soul to help all listeners begin their own journey back to their heart's dreams and to notice the coincidences and synchronicities in life that bring them everyday miracles and magic. Stay tuned to the Age Has No Limit podcast to learn more about Karen Cleveland. It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome back to the podcast. With me is Karen Cleveland. So, Karen, after reading your bio, your story cemented in my mind and really my belief that people who experience challenging life experiences are some of the best sources of support, guidance, and encouragement. How do you think that your previous challenges help you inspire others?
Yeah, great question. I think because it's not theory. So I've been through, as low as I felt like I could go, payday loan to payday loan, which is just sucks. And having my son living with me who is going through a medical crisis, and I had to dig my way out. So it's not theory. I've been there. I can relate to a lot of experiences, not every experience, and people can relate to my story and perhaps give them hope that if I could do it, I'm not special. Maybe they can do it as well.
Yeah. And so it's so interesting. You just started off by talking about those payday loans. When would you say that you really realize, wow, these payday loans are, really not helping the way I think they are, or just whenever that something clicked around the payday loans and the fact that you may, needed to actually change that, taking advantage of those?
Well, I don't know if you know, but there's a limit on the number of, at least in Washington State, there's a limit on the number of payday loans you can get. So once you hit, I don't know what the number was, let's say 22, so 22 weeks, they won't give you any more. So then you've paid them back, you got your paycheck, but you have no money. And then it's like, now what? Now I have nowhere to turn. So, I kind of had to realize I have to figure something out because there's no loan. I need to figure something out. And I also felt like a huge failure. So while that was going on, while my son was living with me, going through this health crisis, I was living in what I considered subpar housing. I was renting from my niece on the family discount. I still could barely afford it. And I just like, okay, this is it. I need to figure something out. And so I decided I'm going to spend the next month dedicating myself to something. I had had a bunch of teachings in the past, tools and solutions, but I only did them sort of. So I decided to dedicate myself to myself, that I would do what I could, see what worked, see what didn't work, and see what I could do to create a new life for myself.
That's good. So in other words, you decided to go inward rather than focus
Yes.
on, that makes a lot of sense, because going inward more than likely, of course, helps you feel better about your external situation, and helps to probably, stimulate ideas on ways to address it. So I'm glad you made that clear. Now, As a result of that, and probably even before, you are now a spiritual connection specialist and a new thought minister. If you can share with me and the audience, what is a spiritual connection specialist and how have you personally helped others?
Yeah, that's a little bit of an obscure term for some people, and maybe it's a little bit broad, but
Mm-hmm.
I believe that our connection to just about everything in our
Mm-hmm.
life, not only our heart and our soul or God and the divine,
Mm-hmm.
but even our connection to other people, to animals, to the land,
Mm-hmm.
um, everything has an opportunity for us to grow and evolve a little bit and to, more importantly, live a life of meaning.
Yeah.
So, and I can say I wasn't living a life of meaning back then, not much, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's through learning about these connections and learning how to use them as tools
Mm-hmm.
for our personal growth. And so I do this, like actually one of my classes is very specifically about, each week is different. So this week we're talking to and we're connecting with our body. And
Mm-hmm.
this week we're talking to and connecting with our environment. And one week, it's other people. So that it's kind of holistic that way. It's not just me and my connection with my God or my spirit, the universe,
Mm-hmm.
however people want to identify it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's our relation to everything and what is the opportunity for growth for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And every time I have conversations, every single episode, there's something that my guest actually explains that just opens up and just helps me and brings some clarity about certain things. You mentioned something about the fact that everything's growing. So trees are always growing unless they're dying at the root or something, it's dying in some way. Plants are always growing. They may go under if they're in a season where there's winter and of course they stop growing for several months, but eventually they start growing. And it made me start thinking about how humans your comment made me think about how humans and how we're also supposed to be continuously growing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up because it again just cemented that in my mind as well. You mentioned something about the classes and that one particular week you're focusing on the body, and another week you and the people that are in your classes are focused on the environment. Tell me a little bit about the classes. Who's in your classes? And what are the purpose of the classes?
Yeah, I think the purpose of the class is two things: to get to know ourselves better
Mm-hmm.
and our relationship to the world, but
Mm,
also my ultimate goal is for people to know that, as you were saying, there are seasons, there's dormancy, there's growth.
mhm,
We go through seasons,
mhm,
and that it's okay. It might look like we're in a season of dormancy,
mhm,
which I consider is more the internal growth
mhm,
season when we're not out there in the world being active,
mhm,
but we're concentrating on our own personal inner world,
mhm,
and it's okay.
mhm,
Um, and sometimes things in the external world look like they're not okay, and okay, I mean they're not okay, but we will get through it. We have a way to get through it and
mhm,
to learn from it if we need to. If we need to take action on behalf of others, then we do that. If we learn what we need to do, basically.
mhm, mhm,
So, it's different for everyone. And so I think those classes, primarily the people that take them, people in transition, for example, a divorce,
mhm,
new baby, loss of a job,
mhm,
hating our job,
mhm,
some kind of transition
mhm,
that throws us up in the air and says, I don't know what's happening in my life and I
mhm.
don't know what to do, and it's not okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So now that we know a little bit about you, about the classes, and just some of the challenges that you've actually had to experience, tell me a little bit more about Karen Cleveland, the woman. Where are you from? Do you have any siblings? And what did you do in the early stages of your career?
Oh, sure. So
Mm-hmm.
I was born and raised in the north end of Seattle. suburbs, middle class, Catholic. And I have two brothers, two sisters. I'm the baby. So I always felt like I was not heard, never had a voice growing up, which is the impetus to a lot of things that I do now. But I have two children. I've been married a couple times, and I'm now a grandmother for the first time as of less than a month ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm still living in the general Seattle area. I'm north of Seattle now.
Mm-hmm.
And my early career was I was working at a local burger joint
Mm-hmm.
out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know what I was going to do, didn't have any plans, and my mom said, "You need to go take this class while you figure it out." So I
Yeah.
went to a pharmacy assistant class, pharmacy technician,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually stayed in pharmacy my entire life. I hated it every minute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I went through pretty much as I could without getting a further degree. So I
Mm-hmm.
became a teacher. I became an automation expert, pharmacy automation.
Mm-hmm.
I got into pharmacy IT.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into all these ancillary pharmacy
Mm-hmm.
careers, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, I'm grateful for the knowledge. I have a very like logical and scientific background then.
Mm-hmm.
Biology, a lot of biology classes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I feel like I'm very different. I always felt like I didn't align with the pharmaceutical belief system.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you hate it, and what was the misalignment with the pharmaceutical belief system?
I just don't think the body needs all those drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And and after being in the career for nearly 40 years, I don't um I don't necessarily trust
Mm-hmm.
the organizations that people put their trust into for what is best for our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I I don't take any regular medications, and I think that there's better options for people. Not everyone. There's medication can give hope to people where there is no hope,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important. But I think we really need to look at for our own bodies, for ourselves, how can we take a little more control over that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Now, I read on your website, and her website, by the way, for those of you who are listening, is RevKarenCleveland.com, REV KarenCleveland.com, that you love to travel. And anyone who listens to this podcast know that I also love to travel. So what three countries would you say you've enjoyed the most and why?
It's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the three places that always called me since I was young was
Mm-hmm.
Italy, Greece, and Kenya. So I've been to all three. I haven't spent a lot of time in Italy and Greece, but I've been there and spent some time. I love the landscape. I love the feel of the land. And actually, it's part of what I'm developing in my class is when I talk about our connection with the land, it's like, why is that land calling me? What
Mm-hmm.
do I feel when I'm there?
Mm-hmm.
What might I learn about myself? How can I interact? So I love learning new things. I love learning about the cultures. I love learning about the people. I like
Mm-hmm.
to get in on a non-tourist level as much as possible
Mm-hmm.
and just just experience it and see what other people are living. And in Kenya, of course, it's also the animals that call
Mm-hmm.
me there. The
Mm-hmm.
animals, the land, the people, the culture, all of it.
Yeah, yeah. So Italy, Greece, and Kenya. Okay, I think it's interesting you say Greece. So Greece is on my must visit list. Specifically Mykonos and some of the other islands. Not, yeah. So Greece is definitely calling me. I'm interested in going there, but more so again to kind of take a deep dive into the culture. I've had an opportunity to um learn about some of the islands. I actually
Mm.
used to have a website that was all about islands, culture on islands, boutique hotels on islands. It was a fantastic idea, an idea I hope to return to. But yes, I absolutely agree about Greece, and Kenya is also on my list. I want to do a 3-month jaunt from Kenya to Tanzania to Ethiopia.
Oh,
It doesn't matter what order. It may be Ethiopia first, and then Kenya, and then Tanzania, so that I can hop on over to Zanzibar. So yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I definitely 3 months. That's my plan.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward a month per country. So I think, telling me a little bit about Kenya and why that place is kind of called you and speaks to you is a really great segue to talk about the fact that you actually offer what you call carefully curated transformational adventures in sacred safaris. So I have lots of questions about that. Tell me first what makes them sacred safaris.
Mhm.
And then, of course, let's talk about why Kenya as it relates to the safaris. Yes, we know they offer safaris, but so do
Right.
Tanzania and South Africa. So tell me more about why Kenya and why they're sacred.
All right, sure. So to
Mhm,
me, sacred means anything that brings us closer to knowing ourself or knowing our God or both.
mhm, mhm,
And that which allows the divine in just a little bit to light a spark
mhm,
to grow our greater potential and like I said before, meaning in our life, something that provides meaning or fulfillment in our life, kind of reaching towards our purpose, what's our passion.
mhm,
And so when I take people on safari, one of the things that we do is I have a number of exercises and practices. So we don't just go out and look at animals.
mhm,
We do some, connection and energy practices and we have a journal, they can
mhm,
take home if they want to continue with it after the safari. And
mhm,
everything is optional, of course.
mhm, mhm,
But but if you just want the basic trip to go out and see animals, you're probably not going to come with me. So
mhm,
that's that's what I call a sacred safari, something that's
mhm,
going to help us connect with the
mhm.
people, the land, and the animals a little bit deeper than just being a tourist driving through the parks.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're comfortable, give me an example of an activity because of course this is your enterprise, but whatever tiny bit you can share
Yeah,
so that it can help us imagine what that experience is like. And if you can also let us know how someone who may be interested can actually sign up to go on one of the sacred safaris.
sure, sure.
Hmm.
So one of the things I fully believe in intention,
Hmm.
and I recommend people at the start of the day that
Hmm.
they get quiet with
Hmm.
themselves
Hmm.
and what do they want for the day? So don't just get up, throw your clothes on, go to breakfast, sit for a minute and really consider how you want your experience to be for the day. Not necessarily what are you going to see, but that might be part of it, but how do you want to feel?
Hmm. Hmm.
So really get intentional with how you want to feel. Do you want to feel surprised? Do you want to feel connected? Do you want to feel like joyful, peaceful, calm?
Hmm.
What do you want your experience to be? And then a little bit of, I guess, visualization, like how
Hmm.
does that play out? So it does play out that we go around a corner and we see an elephant standing in
Hmm.
front of us, or,
Hmm.
I have eye contact with a lion or whatever it might be, but be very intentional about it.
Hmm.
And here's one thing I think is really important, no matter where you are, if you're dealing with wildlife,
Hmm.
manage your energy. So
Yes.
if you
Oh,
go in
yeah.
all crazy, oh my God, it's
Hmm.
a lion,
Hmm.
you know, um, we're either going to be taken as a predator or
Yeah.
competition.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So really be aware of your energy before you head out to see the wildlife. And while you're out there, I mean, it's natural. My first time on safari, I turned around and I saw zebras for the first time in the wild, and I screamed.
Hmm.
So I get it.
Hmm.
But then after that first little outlet, then, really be aware of how you're presenting yourself.
This sounds and how would a person sign up?
Yeah.
Because I'm actually very intrigued. I would love to go on one of these sacred. Maybe I can align my trip to Kenya with maybe one of the next times that you go
Yeah.
because I think Well, first of all, I do want to go on a safari, and I would love to go on a safari that required me to be more present, more aware of my energy, and even awareness of my connection to everything around me, the trees, the grasslands, the animals. So I'm actually really intrigued.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
Rev Karen Cleveland,
Mhm.
backslash safari tells
Mhm.
a little bit about my next safari.
Mhm.
And there's a big news coming.
Mhm.
Excuse me, it's not officially announced yet, but I'm going to be offering more safaris. Let's just put it that way. This
Yes.
year I have one safari.
Mhm.
2025, I will have many more.
Mhm.
Um, so Rev Karen Cleveland is where you can find them.
Mhm.
And yeah, I would love. So December is my trip this year.
Mhm.
It's almost sold out,
Mm.
but there's always more coming. So
So tell me when in December. I'm very serious.
okay. All right.
Because
Very
maybe I could,
serious.
the reason, because I typically do like a long holiday trip, a 4 week trip over the holidays. So when in
Okay.
December? Hmm.
December 6th to 16th.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Good. Good to keep in mind. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
sure.
Now, one of the things that also intrigued me when I read your bio and went to your website is that you describe yourself as an animal communicator. And so, are there any experiences that you can share that confirm that you are communicating and connecting with animals? And let me also preface all of this by saying that I do believe, as you mentioned, you need to monitor your energy when you're around some of these animals because we are all energetic beings, humans and animals. So the fact that you are an animal communicator is not surprising, but I would love to learn some of the
Yeah,
experiences that confirm that for you and also will help our audience fully understand what that means.
sure. So as a professional, I guess doing it with a client is a little different than just knowing with my own animals or
Mm-hmm.
animals around me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I was at a barn, a horse barn, talking
Mm-hmm.
to horses the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and I really picked up from the horse that she typically she always knew when her person came,
Mm-hmm.
but all of a sudden, because of the sound of the car. She
Mm-hmm.
knew when the car arrived, she could look out her window, she could see the car, and then her person would arrive at her stall a little bit
Mm-hmm.
later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of a sudden, her person started arriving without her car arriving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I asked the person, did you get a new car?
Mm-hmm.
And she got a new car. So the horse didn't recognize the sound of the car yet. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was kind of a confirmation. I would say um, a lot of the time, I
Mm-hmm.
get images of something specific,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be like a very specific toy,
Mm-hmm.
but a very uncommon kind of toy for
Mm-hmm.
dogs or for the horses, even.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ask someone about that kind of toy, or I say, uh, they really love playing with this, or they don't love playing with this, whatever it is, and the person's like, wow, how do you know about that? Because except when I'm at the barn,
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't go to people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
I do this over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have a visual. I'm not in their house. I don't see things. I just get a picture of their animal. And
Mm-hmm.
so them confirming the things that I am seeing or feeling
Mm-hmm.
is part of it. But also, probably the biggest way that I connect with animals
Mm-hmm.
is energetically, physically. And I
Mm-hmm.
can tell them there's a tooth problem, there's a
Mm-hmm.
shoulder problem, there's a heart problem.
Wow.
And
That's
so, and then
awesome.
they go to the vet and get
Yeah.
confirmation of what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. That is awesome. Now, is this something you realized you were able to do as an adult, or were you always really tuned in to animals even as you were growing up?
I I loved animals, but I wouldn't say I was necessarily tuned in any more than anyone else, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I was an adult, I
Mm-hmm.
had teenage kids,
Mm-hmm.
and my daughter said to me, there were several events, but one was I was always telling my kids, what the dog wanted them
Mm-hmm.
to do. And my daughter stopped me and she says, Mom, how do you know what Buddy wants? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you not know what Buddy wants? What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking classes,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say that my animal communication
Mm-hmm.
evolution
Mm-hmm.
and my spiritual evolution kind of happened at the same time. They were
Yeah.
synergistic.
Yeah.
A lot of the same things going on. So
Hmm. Interesting. So, and so so there are people who, or clients that compensate you for helping them have a deeper understanding of their animals, whether they're pets or working animals. Tell me a little bit about that. That's very intriguing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and it's not something I ever thought I would
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was part of the classes I was taking to learn. So the first weekend that I took a class,
Mm-hmm.
I just did it to see,
Mm-hmm.
is it true? Could it really be? And I got feedback from a person. I had a cat tell me, I just wish someone would bring me a mouse.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the weirdest thing. And the
Mm-hmm.
woman said, "Oh, well, that's because she's retired. She's not a barn mouse, a barn cat anymore." And
Mm-hmm.
sure enough, the new barn cats do bring her mice.
Yeah. Wow.
It's
Yeah.
like, who brings a cat a mouse? But anyways, so so that's when I thought, well, maybe this is real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was also a physical thing that weekend that I don't recall what. So as part of that class, I continued to take classes for a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she would encourage us, it's like, why are you taking this class
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to help people with it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, right. So then I started slowly getting some clients,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a little strange. Some people want to test me. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm not going to tell you anything, just tell me what they have to say. And in fact, I had a person, so
Mm-hmm.
a gift certificate. The guy got a gift certificate. His family wanted him to come in with his dog.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by come in, I was working out of a store at that time, but came in, the dog was fine, the person was fine, everyone, told them told him what I got.
Mm-hmm.
And after he left, all the people were like, well, what'd they say? What'd they say? And I'm like, why? It was just kind of a normal appointment. And apparently the dog was aggressive to other people.
Mm-hmm.
The dog didn't see it as a problem, so the
Mm-hmm.
dog didn't mention it to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the person didn't tell me anything about it because
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a problem to him.
Yeah.
So if it's not a problem for the animal,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably not going to mention it. You have to
Yeah.
specifically ask me to ask them
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a fascinating business. I mean, I don't do it full time right now or anything because I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other stuff going on, but it's interesting and I love helping people with their animals.
Okay. So, in addition to being an animal communicator and taking people on sacred safaris, what else what are some of the other things that you're involved in that you're willing to share so that people
Yeah,
can know a little bit more about what Rev Karen Cleveland does and has to offer?
sure. That mainly it's classes, animal communication sessions, and one-on-one, like
Mm-hmm.
coaching, like spiritual life coaching sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any programs at the moment, but I do
Mm-hmm.
have some coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And and then safaris. So like I said, I'm going to be offering more safaris, but then I also work out of a local church. I work out of the Seattle Centers for Spiritual Living.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a staff minister there, so once in a while I'm there on Sunday and I might
Mm-hmm.
teach a class there. Actually, I have an animal communication class coming up there this
Mm-hmm.
summer.
Mm-hmm.
But so those are the primary ways of
Mm-hmm.
working with people that I work with people. And eventually, everything can be found on my website. It's not
Mm-hmm.
always 100% up to date, but it
Mm-hmm.
will eventually get there and
Mm-hmm.
be an offer on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I find what you do fascinating. Do you ever and what are your thoughts about this? Do you ever meet anyone who says, "Hey, you're a reverend. You are supposed to be helping people in this area of your life. You are saying you're doing something that maybe this religion doesn't really accept as truth." What are you, have you ever been faced with that? And in just what and how have you handled it?
I haven't been faced with it like person to person, in person,
Mm-hmm.
certainly on Facebook and some of the social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only relate to my experience.
Absolutely.
So I just tell them this is my experience with
Mm-hmm.
God. This is my experience with animals.
Mm-hmm.
I know you think women can't be ministers, but
Mm-hmm.
here I am.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there is a lot. Uh perhaps I'm not big enough that I
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of attack about it. There's a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just always have to fall back on my own experience. In fact, it was one of the reasons I never wanted to like really do an animal communication business
Mm-hmm.
because in pharmacy,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like all my scientist type friends were going
Mm-hmm.
to be like, that's not possible. It's not possible. And
Yeah.
I finally realized it's like, you know what? It's my experience. You can't argue
Mm-hmm.
with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did you see the video? And I remember because as I was preparing to meet with you, I started thinking, and I was almost wondering, is this some kind of video trick? Did you actually see the video where there was a woman on a, it's not a surfboard, but I think I forgot what they call those
A
kinds of
paddleboard.
a paddleboard. And she's on the paddleboard, and beneath her is a killer whale. And someone is somehow shooting this, from above. And that killer whale is just kind of, you know, swimming around her. Eventually, I guess it realized, okay, she's not a threat. So it took its tail and just kind of patted the paddleboard a little bit, and it kind of shifted her paddleboard a little. Then after that, it started rolling around, and everyone was just so fascinated. I remember a lot of the comments were like, "Oh my God, I'm in tears." But I wasn't surprised. It was surprising because I've never seen anything like that. But it wasn't necessarily surprising because, as I said, I do believe that we are connected. But I'm curious if you've seen that video and if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, if I'm thinking of the same one,
Mm-hmm.
yes. There's a couple of
Mm-hmm.
the orcas that are swimming around her, and I think it's interesting. So they are part of the dolphin family. They're not
Mm-hmm.
whales, they're not sharks.
Mm-hmm.
They're part of the dolphin family,
Mm-hmm.
and dolphins are very playful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had the most fantastic experience in the
Mm-hmm.
Bahamas swimming with the wild dolphins,
Mm-hmm.
and they just want to play.
Yeah.
It's like they play and have sex and sleep, and that's it, or eat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so seeing these orcas,
Mm-hmm.
and up in Seattle we have orcas, but I don't go out and interact with them much. I
Mm-hmm.
really should.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't surprise me because I think they know um most of us
Mm-hmm.
are friends, and
Yeah.
we're not a threat. Certainly they probably saw she wasn't a threat,
Yeah.
and so they just had a little bit of fun.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that was I mean, I saw that myself, and I think I rewatched it, like I replayed it several times because it was just so fascinating. And especially when you consider how large they are. It was the
Yeah.
first time also I think I saw how large they are
Yeah.
compared to the human. They're probably about 50 to 100 times. Very, very, really, it was just really large. And I was like, wow, this
Yeah.
is fascinating. And, it's just a good reminder of how diverse our universe and our Earth even is. But yeah, that
Yes.
was fascinating.
Yes.
So as I said before, I believe we are truly connected to everything around us, including plants, animals, wind, even inanimate things. How does that align with your view that, since you, of course, are a spiritual connection specialist?
Oh, totally on board. Totally on
Mm-hmm.
board with that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe all things, even the seeming inanimate,
Mm-hmm.
everything is energy. So let's
Mm-hmm.
just start with everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has a way for us to connect with it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my exercises is to pick up a rock because they're even though they're very dense,
Mm-hmm.
they still have energy in them. It's
Mm-hmm.
just very slow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have an opportunity to, I guess, connect with everything in the world, the
Mm-hmm.
computer, the car, the
Mm-hmm.
phone,
Mm-hmm.
in a more energetic, spiritual way if we allow ourselves to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my world, we are all connected, and God or source or spirit is part of that connection. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's present in everything too, in the
Yeah.
computer, in the car, in the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mm. So what are your thoughts about the fact that, so for example, I believe that, and maybe it's the world that I'm in, and maybe it's the information that I tap into and read, but there seems to be a greater awareness of this connection. Do you think that there is a greater awareness in terms of the number of people who are tapped into our connectedness with everything around us, despite your religious belief, understanding that that or spiritual belief that there is a connectedness. Yeah, just love to know your thoughts about whether or not you think there is like a great awareness across the board, across the world about that.
That's something I think about a lot too, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the people I know and
Mm-hmm.
my world now, or if
Mm-hmm.
there is more people. So it seems like it's a growing awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like there's more people. I think it's more mainstream
Mm-hmm.
than certainly there's a lot more mindfulness, meditation type stuff, and I think all that is lending itself to being connected with everything. So I do think it's growing. I also think there's still a lot of firm beliefs that there is not. There's separation.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, speaking of connection, you are also the host of the Connectedness podcast. So, when did you start the podcast and what was the inspiration?
I started about a year and a half ago, but it was after a year of, meaning to,
Mm-hmm.
intending to start it. And I just couldn't figure out what exactly to talk about or what to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I wanted to talk something about animals and something about spirituality and something about connection. And I had actually had a radio show maybe 10 years ago on the
Mm-hmm.
radio, had to pay for it. It was a vegetarian show. I was
Mm-hmm.
interviewed all these different veggie type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. I love talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is an extension of my early days of not being heard as a child. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
now listen to me. I have something to say. But
Mm-hmm.
I actually, for something else, I took a Clifton Strengths
Mm-hmm.
quiz,
Mm-hmm.
and my number one strength is connectedness.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, that's the name of my podcast. That's what I'm going to name it. And I'm just going to talk about all things connectedness.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the inspiration for it. And it's, kind of goes through some changes and variations. I love doing it. I love talking to new people. I love learning new things.
Mm-hmm.
So it just feels like a natural fit to do
And
it.
so, what would you say you enjoy the most about it? And is there one particular episode that stands out? Like, this was the episode where either I learned something about myself, or I know I communicated something to listeners because maybe I received some feedback and they communicated how much that episode helped them. Is there a particular episode that really stands out in your mind?
I don't know what it's called, but
Mm-hmm.
I've had a couple episodes where I talk about animals,
Mm-hmm.
and because I don't talk about them in every episode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people have told me it's really helped them when their animals pass on, understanding that there is, they're okay. The
Mm-hmm.
animals are okay. They don't harbor ill feelings toward us after
Yeah.
they pass on.
Mm-hmm.
And so there actually was a period of time when a lot of the people that came to me were wanting me to talk to their animal that had passed on.
Yeah.
And so I mean, that's extremely, what's the word? I mean, it feels so good to help those people because it's so hard when
Yeah.
an animal dies.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't get it. They don't
Mm-hmm.
understand why you're grieving over a dog or a cat.
Mm-hmm.
And so just being able to bring some peace to them and, help answer some of those unanswered questions at the end has been really meaningful. But back to the podcast. So I think some of the episodes where I talk about those kinds of things have been very helpful for
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have the connectedness podcast. You, of course, you offer classes, and of course the sacred safaris, and and of course the animal communication. I would say services that you provide. So that's about four different things. So you are truly the entrepreneur's entrepreneur.
Yeah.
How would you say though that entrepreneurship has enriched your life?
Yeah, it's been such a blessing. My mom was always get a good job and have a paycheck, and that's the way you live. She's the one
Mm-hmm.
that got me went to the class, right? That said,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have this job.
Mm-hmm.
I think entrepreneurship offers different kinds of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It might be schedule freedom or travel freedom, depending
Mm-hmm.
on what you want, but
Mm-hmm.
also a lot of self-growth. I
Yeah.
mean, You have to, you're not getting a paycheck. You don't have to report to someone.
Mm-hmm.
I heard someone say, it wasn't Brene Brown. Now I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember who it was, but
Mm-hmm.
oh my God. Anyways, Mel Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we're young, people force us to do things. Our parents force us to go to school. But when
Mm-hmm.
we're adults, there's no one forcing us, especially as entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to find it within ourselves
Mm-hmm.
to do whatever it is we need to do. Otherwise, we're living on the streets or whatever. So, um, yeah, I think being an entrepreneur, it's so satisfying and there's so much growth and so much pride in things that you can accomplish in it.
Yeah, yeah. If you slow down long enough to have the
Yes,
time to be
yes,
proud. And that's something I'm personally working on because I'm just like moving, moving, moving. And then
yes.
people are like, you've done this. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's on to the, I'm like, I'm not even sitting and processing it. But you did mention Brene Brown and you mentioned Mel Robbins. Who inspires a spiritual connection specialist like you?
Uh,
What writer or, public speaker inspires you?
there's several.
Mm-hmm.
One is definitely Oprah, but
Yeah.
and one is
Mm-hmm.
I just Rupert Sheldrake is a
Mm-hmm.
biologist,
Mm-hmm.
but talks about morphic fields and the connection
Mm-hmm.
of things. And I follow a coincidences expert, for lack of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Bernard Beitman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, I've as an entrepreneur and trying to develop the spiritual side, Rachel Rogers has been a huge inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot. Yeah, over the life, and it's changed a little bit. I think just with the evolution and the level, of assistance or growth that I need,
Mm-hmm.
it does change. But I follow the activities and the people that speak at the Institute of Noetic Sciences a lot. So the
Mm-hmm.
ions people.
Mm-hmm.
So just people that kind of expand our thinking a little bit. That's who I'm drawn to right now.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you mentioned Rachel Rogers. So for those of you who don't know, Karen and I are actually in the same club, or it's really a group of women, business women around the world. As far as Australia, thousands of us who are in this club that was started by Rachel Rogers. I don't think she gets enough recognition, not yet. I know she will very, very soon, for this amazing movement that she started, where she has women and other historically excluded people in this club, and they are inspiring each other. They're answering each other's questions. They are there's a certain energy that I've experienced in that club, let's call it that, more so than any other let's call it, because I don't think it's just a business member,
Right.
entrepreneurs club or anything like that. So, but I'm glad you mentioned that because again, I don't think she gets enough recognition yet, but she certainly will because she's definitely started a movement. So now define what you think an age has no limit life. What is that for you? What does it mean to you?
It's a constant battle for me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking, oh, why am I doing this when I'm so old? You
Mm-hmm.
know, I wish I had known this 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And then I just have to get over the fact that there's a lot of people that start a lot of great initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be 60 this year, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe it, but it's, I look back and it's like, yeah, I remember every decade, so I guess I really am.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's what we are called to do. It doesn't matter what our age is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s that
Mm-hmm.
are living a thriving life and have
Mm-hmm.
started, like I said, new initiatives at
Yeah.
these older ages. And
Yeah.
so if you let age define and stop you from
Mm-hmm.
doing something, then um, I mean that's a shame because you don't have to.
Absolutely. So, I remember doing one of my solo episodes, and I actually decided, why don't I find out? who are the people that we are all very familiar with who've accomplished things. So, and I found quite a few people who their success really took off when they were older. So, Vera Wang started out as a journalist, and I think, or even an ice skater. I don't remember what it was that she did. And it wasn't until she was in her 40s that her, gown design and all whatever her business, her fashion design business took off. So there's Toni Morrison, who had been writing all these years and received her Nobel Prize for Literature, I believe in her 60s. The what is the name of the chef? A woman, they even did a movie about her. I know you know what I'm talking about. She spoke like this. I know you know what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, she's one example. So there are a number of people, even the gentleman that started KFC. There are all these people. It wasn't until they were in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that their careers and the mark they were intended to make on the world started to really take off and gain notoriety. So you're in good company.
Yeah.
You're in good company.
Yeah.
So do you have a bucket list? And or is there anything on that bucket list that you'd like to share with us?
I don't know if I have a real bucket list
Mm-hmm.
because I tend to do things now that I want to do, but there
Mm-hmm.
are some things that okay, so I do have a list, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So one is that I want to go to Ranthambore
Mm-hmm.
National Park in India
Mm-hmm.
because because I thought it was the setting of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle
Mm-hmm.
Book, although I
Mm-hmm.
just read last night that
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a different park. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whichever park it is, I
Mm-hmm.
want to see both of them because I want to see the wildlife and to be honest, to go back to Kenya for a minute,
Yeah.
even though I always wanted to go there, it
Mm-hmm.
was reignited when
Mm-hmm.
my kids were little and we had Lion King on the TV
Mm-hmm.
24 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to go there. I need to
Mm-hmm.
go there. Anyways, so I
Mm-hmm.
want to go to those parks in India.
Mm-hmm.
This is a switch. I want to go to the Jane Austen Festival in Bath,
Mm-hmm.
England.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh. Cool.
Um, I want to go to Antarctica
Yeah, yeah.
and I've always wanted to be a travel guide, a tour
Yeah.
guide. I
Yeah.
took travel classes 30 years ago to be a travel agent, and I was for about 6 months before I
Mm-hmm.
realized I couldn't make any money at it. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, so being a tour guide, and I'm kind of doing that now, and
Mm-hmm.
my expansion plans definitely include it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Love to hear that. Very, very excited. So, yeah, and you will do it. But you just itemized them, and as a result of things that you're putting in place, you will certainly be able to do it. And that's another one of the great things about being an entrepreneur is that you have the time freedom, and in many instances also the money freedom, and you can actually do the things that you want to do. So that's
yes,
fantastic.
yes.
Well, I thank you so much, Karen, for spending time with me and, of course, the audience and helping us, you know, think a little bit deeper about the ways that we're connected to things around us, and helping us understand that things aren't only what we see with our eyes. There's a lot of things going on beneath the surface and a lot of things that we can do as humans to affect things around us, including animals. So,
Mhm.
thank you again for spending some time with me and for being yet another example of a person that proves that age has no limit.